call to order the meeting of the Ellwood City Area School District, December 4th, 2014. Roll call, Mr. Zerone.
Mr. Bazzelli.
Here.
Mr. Cortez.
Here.
Mr. Garda.
Here.
Mrs. Grossman. Mr. Morella. Mr. Newpower.
Here.
Mrs. Pansara. Mrs. Petrelli.
Here.
Mr. Stevenson. Ms. Reese.
Here.
Mr. Mancini.
Here.
Mr. Carey.
Here. We stand for a moment of silent meditation followed by a pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We're going right to our visitors. We can do Laura right now. Ms. Reese, would you like to do your presentation?
Yes, hello, my name is Laura Reese, and I'm treasurer of Senior High Student Council, and I will be giving you a rundown of what's been going on. Student Council had its annual mentoring meeting program for 7th grade on Tuesday, November 18th during advisory period from 10 o'clock a.m. to 10:30 a.m. All of our members were involved. There were 50 stations arranged in the cafeteria where each student council member spoke to 3 or 4 7th graders. The theme for this first mentoring program was to talk to students about developing good study habits. Maggie Prokovich and Megan O'Donnell were the chairmen for this event. Our members described how important it is to have good organizational skills, how to develop good study habits, and how to find help in their studies in the school whenever a student may need it. The members used specific examples to illustrate how to accomplish these goals. Next, the annual Senior High Student Council is preparing for its annual Christmas dance. The dance theme this year is Winter Wonderland. Members that are cheering for this dance are Peyton Keeble and Lake and Ceci. It will be held at the Connick Country Club on December 13th from 7:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. This year's dance will feature an elegant setting with a photo booth allowing unlimited photos for our students and a large dance floor and all of our favorite music. Also, students can have a lovely buffet dinner. There's a $20 tax and tip included. There's a copy of it out in the commons area. And if any of you would like to join us for dinner and meet and speak with some of our students, please notify Mr. Gavis, and we would welcome your attendance.
I don't think my daughter would appreciate that very much.
Is there any questions?
Thank you, Mark.
Good night.
Thank you.
You too.
You have to wait.
No, I think
You can leave it.
Threatened to chaperone the dance.
Have a good one.
You
too.
Thumbs down on that one. Christmas dance.
There's no education report tonight, just some superintendent stuff, and I'll introduce HHSDR. Just quick announcements: holiday break, December 22nd to January 2nd. I put a paper on your desk. Aaron Parkinson, the high school librarian, has organized a book fair with Barnes & Noble and Cranberry for December 12th to the 14th. Anybody who goes there and presents that paper, a certain percentage of the sale will go to the Ellwood City School District Library. So they're really trying to promote that. If you have a chance to get out there and buy a book or two for somebody for Christmas, and some of the proceeds will go to us. We got the choral concert December 14th. Winter sports starting up obviously this weekend, so we wish them the best of luck. And when we get back, before we have our next meeting, we'll have our midterm exams and winter keystone exams right around the corner. So those will be starting back up in January. Now I'd like to introduce Bob Engelbach from HHSDR to talk about the chiller project that's possibly could happen.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
With me tonight is Jim Mazzini. He's with CBL Engineering. He's our heating, plumbing, electrical consultant. And what I brought along are the drawings we had completed back in 1981. And a lot of this equipment we're talking about was actually replaced or refurbished back at that time. And at the point Mrs. Rowan wanted me to take a look at this. I had Steve come down, or Jim come down when we walked through the building with Steve, and we actually made a second walkthrough to investigate the existing chiller, the evaporator, all the elements. I'm going to let Jim talk about the details of that, but the main purpose for those two visits was to come up with a proposal. So I got that to Mrs. Rowan. I think you all have a copy of that with you. And it goes through some general outlines as to what we would be providing as far as normal bidding package. So the goal here, if you initiate the project, we do research, further research, write up specs, drawings, let that out for bidding, get the bids in, award the contracts, prepare the contracts, and then be there for the construction administration process as we would do the chiller replacement project. And that's what the architectural engineering proposal is for. We also included in that a technical outline of what that work would encompass. And also I had given Rich some cost estimates for the chiller replacement project, and I'll let Jim walk through the details of that. It was about $568,000. Now, the second trip when we came back, we worked with him under Steve's direction around the building, showing us around. We did discover some additional equipment that we felt should be replaced. We would recommend that for your consideration that it would be replaced. It's the two air handlers for the center core of the high school. And this air conditioning that we're talking about is primarily air conditioning the first and second floor and ground floor of the center core of the school. It is also then can be used to air condition the auditorium. That's almost like an either or situation. I'll let Jim talk about the technical parts of that. The other thing we've discovered doing our investigation is there's very limited drawings of the auditorium. The original drawings were 1920. We found some renovation drawings from 1960, and then our drawings from 1980. So there's some additional research, field reconnaissance, which we've done some of, crawling through tunnels, walking through the catwalks. But there'll be more that we do have to do. And then there's another estimate we've asked for your approval. WAE Balancing is giving us a proposal for about $2,000. And we would need their assistance to come in and do some testing and balancing and investigation of some of these existing ducts and passageways that serve the auditorium. Because at this point, the existing data we have is not conclusive, and we need to do some actual field testing with this WAE balancing, which we've done a lot of work with. So that was the other part of the cost. And then the air handling units for the center core were an additional $290,000. So the whole project's $862,000 is our estimate at this point. But the number came in a two-stage process because of how we discovered the problems that we discovered with our site visits here. So with that said, I was going to let Jim go ahead and kind of walk you through in detail what the project's about, where the chiller is, and how that all relates to the existing building.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everybody. And please feel free to interrupt, ask questions. That's what we're here for. If something's, I'm not explaining it clearly enough, or you need some more information. Steve said he wanted me out of here in 8 minutes, but I think we're going to spend a little bit of time in that. He's here already, so it'd be nice taken care of. Maybe real short to explain. Bob said, hey, the chiller doesn't work. We want to do a chiller replacement project. Can you come up and take a look at it? Because in our business, it's never just one thing. There's more than that. A chiller is a mechanical piece of equipment that is running compressors to make chilled water. That chilled water is delivered via pumps and a pipe system to various pieces of equipment. In this case, it's the two central core air handling units and the main central fan serving the auditorium. That chilled water goes through those coils, the air comes in warm, it goes out cold, and that cold air is delivered throughout whatever area the building is serving, and that's what makes the air conditioning and does the ventilation. So, that okay, certainly with a building that's this old, some of it dating back almost 100 years, even the newest equipment is 32, 33 years old, and who knows what was done and tied into in, say, 1981, that dated to 1960 renovations. So we came up, the first trip was made, Steve, you were not here, So we did our first sort of reconnaissance to take a look at what we had. It's true, we had a chiller that doesn't work, pumps that are very old. We were informed there was some strange arrangement that the chiller is fairly small, and it does the 2 floors of the core, and it also does the auditorium, but it's set up that it doesn't do all 3 together. There's a big manual valve in a tunnel. Steve or whoever he assigns the authority to, there's a big long handle, and they either move the valve to move the water to the core or pull it back and send all the water to the auditorium. And while that can be made to work, it's less than optimum. It requires a lot of forethought on when you're going to do one or the other. And so we started to look at it from that standpoint. Certainly things can be done better today. And we thought, well, certainly if we went in and changed the valving on the core air handlers and the auditorium air handling unit, even with a small chiller, we could send chilled water to all 3 of those and air condition all those spaces until the outside temperature got warm enough that the load exceeded that chiller's capacity. And then at some point in time, a decision would have to be made. Do we cool the classrooms or do we cool the auditorium? And all that can be set up in a controls scenario that, with Steve or his folks doing time of day programming, if they know the auditorium is going to be on that night, the auditorium can be the priority. Or if it's during the day, obviously the classrooms would be the priority. So that was sort of the beginnings of our evaluations and looking at things. We did look at putting a larger chiller in, so you could do all of it at any given point in time. The further we got into that, the more we realized there was logic behind the way it was done in 81, in that the way the electric service is, to power up a large enough machine, basically twice the size, the electric service work was estimated at almost $200,000. That's a lot of money just to buy a bigger chiller, where in reality, probably could use that $200,000 somewhere else. With some control sequences, there should be no reason why we can't do the core during the day and the auditorium at some point when the auditorium is fully used for a program or an event. So we're focusing on the smaller chiller control sequences. But then, okay, we make chilled water, we deliver it to some spot. Well, there's other things that have to work properly, or all the money invested in the chiller system is going to be worthless if you don't deliver the air properly, throttle it properly, control it properly. We'd have a great chiller, but we'd still have classrooms that were uncontrollable, air handling units that weren't moving the air properly. So the second meeting when we were with Steve, and they vetted some of their concerns over the last 12 years, we went a little further. And here, the classrooms have control devices that don't function anymore. So the thermostats don't really let the room go and keep it either warm or cold. We found out the air handling units, the heating coils haven't worked for prior to even you got here. The dampers are shut so that they don't freeze the rooms, but they don't shut the whole way. So in order to sort of beat that, they opened the doors to the hallway on real cold days, and that was the day we were here. So they let air from the hall to kind of help preheat it. We look at the inside of the units, you can tell that they're falling apart. The liners are gone, the drain pans are rusty, the piping's rusted, the insulation's duct tape on. I mean, and it's not unusual. It's, who here has a car that's 30 years old that still runs? Probably not many people. Mechanical equipment by its very nature has a life. Do you?
40
How often do you run it?
every year.
Every year. Okay. It takes a lot of effort though, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Well, mechanical equipment has to run every day, rain, snow, sleet or shine type of a deal. So it's not unusual to see equipment, especially if it's air conditioning equipment, because part of the deal with air conditioning is you're making the air cold. You have condensate water that comes off the coils. That water is also moved on the airstream sometimes. So you have an environment that's always wet, or wetter than just the heating only. So water on metal, it's always, things are going to wear out. So looking at that, if someone's going to say, I'm going to hold the engineer responsible that when you get done with your job, everything that it's tied to is going to work. Well, okay, we can place just a chiller. We're still going to be back here in front of you at some point later. Well, why is the classroom still hot, or why can't you control it? So we're looking at the right things to do. And we know nobody has deep pockets with money to throw away. We're trying to spend it the most wise way possible. So that's sort of why we've taken the step to say we don't need a bigger chiller to do the auditorium. We can do some control strategies and spend that money on the air handlers for the core that's really needed. So, any questions so far? Please interrupt. The next piece was the auditorium, in that Steve's concern, and it's a justifiable one, is that even if we do all this, he's always been of the opinion and suspect that the auditorium never was doing what it's supposed to do. No matter what they did, it would take a real long time to cool down, right? And even if you had all the chill water going to that unit, is it the right size? Is it doing what it's supposed to? So we took a good look, and as soon as we walked in there, we could tell that that system was designed back in 1920 or whatever. And we've seen these before. It helps if you have the drawings so you can really confirm what they were trying to do. But the fan's tied into some big plenum ductwork, and then it plugs into the old pipe tunnels that run the length of the auditorium on the sides. And you can see where there's two ducts that poke in, and then it's just using that tunnel as an air chase. And then there's two triangular chases at the proscenium and stage that go up. So we could just tell from there that they likely were moving the original ventilation air that was heated or ventilation only and no cooling through those shafts, and at some point in the auditorium, blowing that air out, returning it back, and then when systems go to, say, 100% fresh air, so you could cool free if the air is cool enough outside, there's what we call relief air that lets all that extra pressure get out so that you're not blowing doors open. You can sort of see how all that's there when you walk around. There's no record of any of it. There's, I don't know, 24 big iron grates in, basically holes in the wall. We know some of them have to be where the air came in. Some of them are where they went back, just returned to the unit. Some of them have been relieved out eventually out through the roof. That's what Bob mentioned. We were walking in the catwalks, very nice catwalk system actually, and poking into the tunnels. But to really figure all that out, since we don't have access to the original drawings, we found the 1960 renovation and additions, but the auditorium and all that shaft work had been completed before, and we just don't have access to the 100-year-old drawings that would say, move this much air down these tunnels, here's where it all came out, here's where it all went back. We would need the assistance of a balancing company that when the fan's on, we would generate some drawings that would show sort of all the holes in the wall, sized, and say, okay, with the fan's all running, let's figure out where all the air is being blown in, where it's being sucked back. And we could kind of like detective work, forensics in the building, figure out how all that air got originally moved through. Given how old it is, we're suspecting that there's air going where it's not supposed to, like into crawl spaces, up into lofts where, okay, they might make 15,000 CFM of cold air, but that's not all getting into the auditorium. And if it's not getting where it's supposed to be, we're wasting all that energy by cooling the air. It's being blown somewhere else. So there's definitely, from what we can see, looking at drawings, there's definitely detective work to get the auditorium, get our arms really around it to say, okay, was 15,000 CFM enough? Are they getting only half of it in there, or is it all proper, but they just never get the chilled water to the right spot? So to do this job right, and basically everything that's tied to that chiller, those are all the pieces and parts that we would be recommending that we take a look at. Now the numbers Bob has in that proposal, we don't know about, other than the piping to the auditorium unit and doing some controls work on it, we don't know what might have to be done with any of the tunnels or the air shafts or whatnot, because we just don't know. So part of, if WAE, the balancer, was engaged, and we would help them sort of generate, okay, here's the plans of all the levels, and here's all the air in and out. Once we get that understood, in real time, then we would be taking a look at, okay, is it a simple fix? Are things okay, or are they not? And then we make some recommendations beyond that. But right now, there's just too much of an unknown with it, and that no drawings, no quantities of any capacity other than the main fan. So we're sort of blind right now when it comes to exactly how the auditorium is supposed to perform. I mean, the good thing is we've seen these types of arrangements before. Erie Academy High School is almost a similar vintage, similar tunnels, these similar big chased out walls in the back that can be very successfully used, air-conditioned big open spaces, but you have to know where the air is supposed to be to start to figure it all out.
So this estimate, let me ask, is $862,000. Does that include something for the auditorium, or it doesn't include anything?
It includes a couple things for the auditorium. One is it includes breaking out the pipe situation so we can send chilled water to all three spots at the same time.
That are already
And
established.
do the cooling up to such a point as it gets warm enough that you have to make a decision that it's one or the other. Right now, it's manual. They do one or the other, and it's only that way no matter what temperature it is. The other thing we would be doing is new controls on that chilled water coil that's on the fan serving the auditorium. So we would have, after it left the fan, we'd have all those pieces ascertained, understood, and functional. But our concern, Steve's concern first brought to our attention, and it's valid, is that we can do all that right, but if somehow, once it leaves that fan and hits those plenums and goes to those tunnels, if it's not effectively being delivered and driven into the auditorium space, all that effort is sort of for naught, because we'll make cold air, but if we're just blowing it into the loft space above the ceiling, or it's getting out of the tunnels into a crawl space, you're wasting money and you're never getting the cooling effect that you want.
In effect, we'd be providing the air conditioning the way it's being provided now.
Right.
Except it's going to be with a new chiller, better controls. So it should be better than it is right now, even if we don't find these other issues. You know, this research may show the best distribution is there now, and that's the way it is. It may show that. And then there's no cost to change anything other than the chiller, the pipe, and the pumps.
Which is a fee that
Which
is right
is
here.
in that cost estimate, construction cost estimate of $862,000, yes. Okay.
Well, I guess then the cost could go up if you find something after the balancing that you need to do some work in the tunnel. So that's an unknown at this point and not included in that 860.
That's correct. And with any construction project, we'll recommend a 5% contingency. This is a planning tool for a board. Whether it's a $100,000 project or a $20 million project, we usually recommend a 5% set aside if you do come across some unknown. In most of our projects, we see that at 0.5% or 1/4%, 1% actually spent out of those contingencies. So we have a pretty good track record of trying to chase these things down. It's a little unusual that, you know, there's no drawings that tell us, you know, how this auditorium is supposed to function. But that's what that $2,000 cost is for WAE as a consultant working for you. We'll oversee that and see what we can discover, you know, in the auditorium area for how that is distributed.
And what we suspect is that the engineer that worked on that 81, Mr. Pasco, God rest his soul, deceased, was a very good, solid engineer. I think Bob knew him far better than I did. But he had a very good track record, a very good reputation. Seeing how he laid out these drawings, he would not, knowing him, he would not have just haphazardly said, let's just plug the coil in, hit the plenums and hope it works. That just would not have been his style. That's the reason I went back to, you know, someone who took over for him and is now somewhere else. I thought he might have the drawings. He did have the 60s drawings, but they weren't the original that would have clearly identified all those routes. My guess is Mr. Pasco had them, used them to base those decisions on. And again, it's pretty hard to find drawings from 32 years ago in anybody's job, especially if they borrowed ones that were up from the 1920s to go make those decisions on.
But we'll, you know, try to keep your interests at heart, you know, and know that you don't want to spend that money. If we can get the system to work the way it is, or with minor adjustments, that would obviously be the goal here. But since you're going to the expense of the new chiller, I think it's prudent to try to research one step further to see if we get to function a little better for you.
Especially when folks you have taken care of it for a dozen years have said that there's other issues there, or we suspect there's other issues there. Now's the time that we're going to be doing investigation, survey work, and whatnot. Now's the time to really make sure we take care of it 100%.
Well, when does WAE come in?
As soon as we can get them in. Because at this point, you would authorize us to proceed. You know, we have some of the drawings, we can start to do some design and drafting and get that started. we would want them in right away so we can understand how these ducts and shafts, and that's the thing that Jim's talking about, all these little boxes that you see, and this is a tunnel and shafts. We would want to get that started as soon as we could, because then we need that to design.
Right, and I don't know why, there'd be no reason why we could not have them in during the Christmas break, which is when we'd like to do most of the survey work anyway, when there's no kids in classes, so that we could get above ceilings, get in tunnels, or not impacting any of the education.
I have a couple of questions. You said Erie Academy, very similar.
Right.
Is it a building that old?
Oh, yes, Academy High School is, I don't know the exact
You
date.
did the project there?
Oh, yes,
How'd that work out?
perfectly. Soldiers and Sailors in Oakland, Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Hall, it was the exact same way. The whole basement was massive air handling units and duct tunnels, made all these shafts. We redid that maybe 15 years ago.
So just so I understand what you found out in the walkthroughs, you have several ductworks going into the auditorium.
Right.
You're not quite sure what each one's function really originally was.
Right.
And with the company you're gonna bring in, how do they identify that?
What they would do, we would make plans that would show, there's multiple levels now. There's low levels, there's underneath the stage, there's multiple grills on the back wall, there's grills that come out sort of underneath the balcony areas, and then there's ones on the wall. We would sort of draw all those up on the multiple levels and label, size the openings, and then we would have the fan running, and they have hoods that they would actually put on those. Now, their hoods are a certain size. They'd probably end up taking a big grill and doing it here, 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 and here, and then trying to approximate their total square footage to give us, with the velocity of air coming out, exactly how many CFM would be coming out of each one of those supply registers. And that's kind of what we need. They're the ones that give us the quantified measurement of the amount of air being delivered.
The other question we have right now, we go from the core to the auditorium, manual valve going in.
It's a Y
Yeah.
down in the basement, okay? And there's a valve here and a valve here on this Y, okay? So when you want your cooling in the auditorium, we close this Y and open this Y. And when you want it in the center core, we close this Y and open this part of the Y. But it's basically a Y.
You're talking about new controls, these would be automatic valves?
Yes.
It could be run like from a PC or?
Yes.
And one of the things we looked at is you could get a larger chiller to do them both simultaneously. As Jim said, right away, you've got $250,000 in electrical.
And knowing how often, if we would be sizing or designing a complete rebuild or a new school, we would never be sizing the big equipment to pick up the worst case of all the classrooms and an auditorium and a gym. If that auditorium is loaded up, it's a pretty good likelihood it's on a nice warm spring night for a play or something, and the kids are missing from the core, or vice versa. It is rare that you're going to see them all there.
Our
And it'd be-
issue was for graduation, we have to shut it down a day or two ahead of time in the inner core to cool the auditorium
right.
down enough, and as soon as they open the doors, it gets real hot.
And then another thing I want you just to understand, when we're talking about pipe chases, we're not talking about a hole this big with a couple pieces of pipe. We're talking about a hole that's probably 4 foot by 4 foot square, that you could actually, they go up and across, but when you're walking on a flat one, you can walk through this pipe chase like this. That's how big an opening this is, and we're forcing this cool air into that huge cavity and trying to get it into, it's just we're wasting a lot of energy is what we're doing. And this test that we're gonna do, which I recommend doing no matter what we decide, will tell us how much air is going and what air is going where and what air is leaving. There's a lot of research that needs to be done anyway, because we're throwing a lot of money away just in energy.
And the only other benefit, the recent re-roof project of the auditorium should benefit this whole situation also. We have R35 up there now, which before it was maybe R10 or 15. So that's going to help the situation in there also. For heat gain and heat loss, but
Well, the other thing you can just touch on that could be an exposure to us, I think you mentioned someplace that I saw that the 65-ton chiller is outside on a slab that is over a coal bin or something. It could be, there'll be some structural engineer look at that and make sure it can support the
Right.
chiller.
Our structural engineer has already looked at that.
Okay.
If we stick with the smaller size chiller, its weight spread out is really no heavier than what's been out there now, but we'll calculate it. But that's a structural slab on top of the coal bin. It was meant to hold something like that.
This is the chimney, the large chimney here. And that area is in here, and then also this area here. That's where the equipment is.
Yeah, but we're fairly comfortable right now that we keep the chiller small, keep that weight. It's only, I think, 7,000 pounds. It's not, not that heavy, so to speak. It might sound like a lot. Spread over the square footage of that chiller, it's not much. And it looks like what that deck was built to hold in the first place.
They're talking about inside the white fence.
Yeah.
So if you would ever want to take a look at it, just call me up and I'll run you in there and let you see it. Give you an idea of what you're looking at.
Got another question if I could. Once the balancing people get here, they'll kind of tell you where the air is coming out and stuff. The kind of work that you would have to do to make repairs, I mean, you'd mentioned there might be additional work, I'm not really sure. I mean, is that plugging crevices in the airways, or?
It might be. What I said we'll do in conjunction with them, when things are running, you mentioned you can get in those tunnels, you can hunker down and walk down them. So we'll be able to, if they're taking these readings and somehow like they'll take a reading right as it comes out the fan, it's called a traverse. They'll be able to tell you exactly how much air that fan moves, square one. In any system, from there to all the registers, there's always some difference. There's always some duct leakage somewhere. We're just going to try to find duct leakage, but there's not ductwork. The ductwork is the building. So we'll have to see what we got and to make sure that, again, when it was built, it should have been built for that. It was built for that purpose. So it shouldn't be that it was just speed tiles sloppily put together with all kinds of holes. It just might be a combination of any number of things, or just a couple holes might have been opened at one point in time that no one was aware of that are compromising the systems of the
These are some of the tunnels you can see here running up along the sides of the auditorium. The stage is here. And these boxes in the back, those are the vertical ducts that we need to determine what's supplying, what's returning, and are they working? There may be no stage prop in there for all we know, but that's what we need to get to the bottom of.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Anything else?
Well, just to clarify, on the proposal, we're not going to ask that we approve another contract. We're referencing the May 8, 2008 contract, which I think dates back to, not to this project, but a project.
Project before that. Yeah,
Before
even
that.
this project, we based on that original contract, which is a standard IA contract.
And John has reviewed that a couple of different times. I just want to mention that the 860 is a construction cost. There's an architect fee of 7% on top of that, and then copying and expenses reimbursed with printing for $6,000. So what would have to happen? We are transferring $650,000 into the capital reserve fund. That's where we would pay for the bulk of the project. And when we get to our budget process for the general fund, we would have to budget some fund balance to pay for the remaining part of the project. So I just wanted the board to be aware of that as you consider.
Just on an educational stance, I know come April, May, that inner core, without any kind of air moving, those rooms are like, they have no windows, they don't have the window air conditioners, they're just, the library, especially when we start testing, that's right when testing happens, April, May, that's when you need, you get a hot day, it's tough, send some air.
A lot of the rooms are manually controlled by us now, not mechanically anymore, because I can't get parts in. So what I basically do in the wintertime, I go up and I close the duct, and then summertime I open it. And it's not right because it's not being regulated properly, so that when these classrooms get too cold, it shuts off. It's like one way. I go up and I open it, and then they just sit there and sometimes get too cold, And they'll call me and say, will you come and close that? And I'll say, yeah, and then I never go.
The new controllers.
That'll automatically get done.
And if controlled, sequenced, and programmed in properly, there should be energy savings that would go with it.
The other question I was asked, take them up and down the house.
But these little VAV boxes are what Steve's talking about, they're broken. and they actually have to do so they can do a summer and winter setting.
Right.
I had asked before, and I believe they told me no, there isn't any other real options we have besides just replacing what we have because of the way the ductwork in the school is because
No,
of
what
the
we're
age.
proposing to do would be keeping all of the main distribution ductwork in the core. We just pull out the old variable volume box and put a new one in and put a new thermostat to control it. So we're keeping the lion's share of all the ductwork. And on the chilled water pipe, other than we'll reconfigure that Y arrangement and new control valves at the units, the chilled water piping from the chiller, you know, the new pumps, but all the piping would be kept. So we're keeping basically all the non-moving parts that don't, you know, wear out over time as quickly as the rotating parts do. We're keeping all that. Yes.
But there's not like, the only other way to do something like this would be with like a remote, we would call it a mini split system. You could end up putting two dozen of those.
And that would cost more by the
It
time
costs
it's
more
done.
money and it'd be more expensive than money also. Definitely, center chiller plant's the most efficient way to cool things.
And those mini split option will be bringing no fresh air into the space for ventilation purposes. That's what those big core air handlers were originally set up to do, to bring the fresh air and keep your air quality good.
This is the center core area we're talking about, and those air handling units are right here. And that's kind of the cross section. They're pretty big, they're half the size of this desk.
Now, are there any grants or anything like that, energy assistance from the government for schools? Because I remember when I was at the conference, there was a different architecture firm, and I can't remember, it was the one who had the bags, which I don't remember. It's bad, but it was the one from the bag. And he was talking about, you know, go to a seminar, he was, you know, really preaching out that there was some ways of getting some money into the school districts and, you know, free money with doing, you know, new projects with, when it came to heating and cooling and stuff like that. Is there anything out there that you know that's available?
There was one item, and I'm not sure how it applies so much to a public entity, but it may be eligible. It's Act 129, and it's the state rules with the power companies that if you can quantitatively show that your job reduced your energy consumption, not versus what you're currently spending, but what the ASHRAE, American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers baseline for, I think it's 2011 would be. You can show that from that baseline to what you really are doing is a savings of so many kilowatt hours per year. They're obligated to write you a check based on, you know, so many dollars per kilowatt hour. That, and we'll go through all that, like, look at the energy model for you. You already had a VAV system set up. There are speed drives on the air handlers already.
Yes.
Because if you didn't have them, it'd be simple. You could get a fixed amount for just putting a drive on, it's so many dollars per horsepower. You already had drives, so, and that just ramps the fan up and down. Even if that wasn't being done, but it was, should have been there, that's what hurts you, because it should have been working and it wasn't. But we'll take a look at it. But often when people say there's a lot of free money to be had, be a little skeptical, because there's not a whole lot that's really free in the world. But we have done these, we're redoing the chiller plant for the Carnegie Museum. Now that's, your chiller's 65 tons and their plant's 3,000 tons, so think of it as an order of magnitude. We're, with our model, through an intermediary that answers to the King Lake, because they won't believe us, they have to have somebody, in fact, what we do to prove that we're doing it right, they're going to get a check for about $90,000. But they're also a lot larger than you are as far as the total capacity goes. So even if there would be some money, it might be some minimal dollars, a few $1,000s, not going to be like, oh, we'll do this job and someone's going to fund the project and pay for the whole thing.
There's another concept out there too, and it's energy savings projects, where you show, what you basically do is do a project like this and verify that you've had some energy savings that basically pays for the project. So I'm not sure if that's what that conference was referencing. We've done 2 of those. We did a boiler that way, and we did some lighting and stuff that way. And it's a different methodology of getting where you're going, where you hire, I think it's called an ESCO, bring a company in, and you basically hire them and they go through the project. Once you hire them, you don't have to go through a bid process. We have found that the bid process, the competitive bid process, benefits us more than having gone through that type of process. Since we have the funds available, it just makes more sense to bid.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We need to thank Bob for coming down on his wife's birthday too.
Oh, that's right, this is Engelbach's
He's in
birthday
big
today.
trouble.
Well, I'll say, yeah.
Hey, you pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy, am I.
She's on her way to New York right now.
You're paying for it. Better than bringing flowers and diamonds.
No, that was last week.
Smart man.
Yeah.
I've done this before.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks again.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Bob.
Nice to meet you.
Safe trip.
Good night. Good night.
Ready to move on? We'll, go into our business portion of the meeting,
Oh,
revenue
yeah.
and finance, Mr. Newpop.
Not so many. My kids love
Mr.
it.
President, tonight under revenue and finance,
Steve.
number 5, general fund accounts payable. In your folder, the general fund accounts payable checks included are checks 108003 through 108144. 142 checks and 10 wire transfers amounting to $1,308,470.10. I move the general fund accounts payable checks be approved as presented.
Second, Mr. Cortez. Any questions? Any objections to the motion? Motion passes.
Number 6, capital reserve fund accounts payable. In your folder is the capital reserve fund accounts payable report. Included is check 1436 amounting to $18,720.77. I move the capital reserve fund accounts payable check be approved as presented.
Second. Mr. Cortez, any questions? Any objections to the motion? Motion passes.
That's it from revenue and finance, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Newpar. Personnel and education, Mr. Garda.
Thank you, Mr. President. Number 7, substitute list. In your folder is a list of non-professional substitute personnel for the 2014-2015 school year. I move the list be approved as presented.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Cortez, any questions? Any objections to the motion? Motion passes.
Number 8, student teachers. I move that the following student teacher placements be approved. Ms. Colleen Hardees from Slippery Rock University be authorized to complete her student teaching assignment under the supervision of Mrs. Mandy Zabelheiden and Mrs. Jill Polino at Northside Primary from January 20th, 2015 through May 7th, 2015. Ms. Deneen Doran from Slippery Rock University be authorized to complete her student teacher assignment under the supervision of Mrs. Jennifer Byers and Mrs. Heather Haswell at Northside Primary Center from January 20th, 2015 through May 7th, 2015.
Second.
Second, Mr. Newpar. Any questions? Any objections to the motion? Motion passes.
Number 9, additional winter personnel. I move that Rich Cavalona be approved as volunteer wrestling coach for the 2014-2015 season pending receipt of all necessary clearances.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Petrelli. Any questions? Any objections to the motion? Motion passes.
Number 10, substitute rate. I move the substitute teacher rate to increase to $85.
Second, Mr. Cortez. Any questions? Any objections to the motion? Motion passes.
That's all I have for tonight, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Garda. Properties and transportation, Mrs. Mrs. Petrelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. Number 11, parent transportation contract. In your folder is a transportation contract between the district and Leanne Dean to transport her child to Faith Country Chapel. I move the contract be approved as presented.
Second, Mr. Cortez. Questions?
I know we talked about this before, where is that?
I'm not sure where.
It's on the old Butler Road in Schneider.
Just north of the sheets.
Any other questions?
Is this the, daycare?
It's a
Preschool.
Preschool.
Preschool, excuse me. Okay.
I'm sorry, actually, I think it's kindergarten.
Well, it's, yeah, it's preschool.
Okay.
I think it has a kindergarten, I think it's a child.
Any other questions? Any objections to the motion? The motion passes.
Number 12, Lincoln Chiller Project. In your folder is a proposal and timetable submitted by HHSDR to provide architectural engineering services for the HVAC updates at Lincoln High School. I move the proposal be accepted as presented.
Second, Mr. Cortez, any questions?
What all is this motion approving?
Leave that entire
The
document.
whole thing, including that, WAE, $2,000 to do that project.
But this doesn't mean necessarily that is this, let me just ask, does this mean we're moving forward and
Yes.
securing them for this project at this price?
It means, well, yes. I guess that you could also get to the point where you go through the bid process and decide at that point it's something you don't want to do, but this would move the whole project completely forward.
So we could still put the brakes on it at some point in time if we don't like what we get back.
Correct.
We would owe them.
We would owe them, yeah, but they're still gonna have a certain fee, they're gonna.
Right. Up to that point. Any other questions? Any objections to the motion? Motion passes.
Number
We're all
13.
sitting there shaking our heads, so you hate to even think about it, but what choice do you have?
Well, when you say open it up to bids, I guess I should ask now, if it came back something more drastic, I mean, when we open it up for bids, are we actually gonna get other bids?
You don't know that.
We've not had too many projects, I don't think we've ever had a project where when they put it out to bid that we haven't received. When we get 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, I would assume, once they get the bid packages out.
Okay. Number 13, facility requests. The Ellwood City Area Baseball Federation has submitted the following facility use requests. A, the big gym for January 11th, 18th, and 25th, 2015, all Sundays from 6 to 8 p.m. for player coach baseball clinics with alternate dates of February 1st, 8th, 15th of 2015. B, the use of, is that Friedolf and Sanders baseball fields for the 2015 spring, summer, and fall ball seasons. Can I ask what Friedolf's, which one is that?
The Little League field.
Oh, it's a Little League field. I move the request be approved as presented.
Second. Mr. Cortez, any questions? Any objection to the motion? Motion passes. Student Affairs and Athletics, Mr. Cortez.
Thank you, Mr. President. 14, school physician agreement. In your folder is a physician's agreement between Dr. Lawrence Ragall and the district for the period of January 1st, 2015 to January 1st, 2016. I move the agreement be approved as presented.
Second. Mr. Newbar, any questions?
Question,
Go ahead.
Mr. Vicarro, if something happens, is this our way out of not getting sued?
Well, you mean,
I was thinking, a kid comes in, gets a physical, okay, he has a heart murmur, he doesn't tell a doctor about it. I would prefer a family physician, doing that, but I know that that's practically impossible. But does that give us?
I mean, we're probably gonna get sued, but, we'd be pushing the liability off on him because we've hired him to do the exam. So if he missed something, it's his fault. I mean, he's, independent contractor for us, not our employee, so
Okay.
we're not liable vicariously like we would be for an employee. So I don't want to parse the words too much. We're probably going to get sued, but I think we're in a better position to defend the suit because he's the one responsible.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any objections to the motion? Motion passes.
15, social event. Mr. John Zabano, Mrs. Lisa Lindenberg, ECPE sponsors request permission to take the ECPE Ellwood City Physical Education Club on a ski trip to Seven Springs, PA on Saturday, February 7, 2015, leaving around 1 p.m. and returning around 12 a.m. I move the social event be approved as presented.
Second?
Second.
Mrs. Petrelli, any questions? Any objections to the motion? Motion passes.
16, revised policy attachment for review. The administration is recommending policy 218.3 attachment, emergency physical restraint report be revised. I move the attachment be acknowledged, incorporated in the minutes of this evening meeting, placed on the agenda of the subsequent meeting for board approval.
Second.
Second, Mr. Newbar. Any questions? Any objections to the motion? Motion passes.
17, new club proposal. In your folder is the constitution for a Stitch and Time Club. Move the club be established, the constitution be approved, and be sponsored by Mrs. Christine Langley at 0 units.
Second,
Second.
Mrs. Petrelli. Any questions? Any objections to the motion? Motion passes.
So you have an idea, they've already started, so they made me this one today. The other day they finished it up. And then they're gonna do is make these things and donate them to Red Cross and Salvation Army scarves and hats. And this group started out of nowhere. Like these kids came down and wanted to start crocheting, and Ms. Walmsley said, well, come down during, and these kids are just like, they're so excited about it, so.
That blows me away.
Yeah, it's.
My clientele, yeah, they like the crochet, but,
Yeah,
yes,
I mean, these group of girls came down and brought this down to me, and they could make these and sell them, they could Wolverine
Yeah.
scarves and hats, and so,
I just, I'm kind of interested to see a new generation.
Right.
Now crochet.
Yeah.
Almost
Yeah.
a lost art,
Yeah.
and people don't do that now.
right, I mean, nice and stuff, so. They're gonna donate stuff to charities and kids that need them.
Yeah, two presents you don't have to buy this year.
This one they're giving away, this one you guys can see, so.
So on craft, they could,
Yeah.
use all the money.
Right.
That's for jealousy when the chiller gets too cold.
It's not like I need my office, I don't need my scarf.
What color Jamie's school? Blue and white.
They are. There's your Christmas. You get one rockets.
That's his wife's.
Has that been approved?
I'm sorry.
That's all I have on the.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez. Recognition and communications, Mrs. Petrelli.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under recognition and communications tonight, we have one from Mr. Joe Mancini. It's congratulations to Felicia Grieco, Laura Adams, Casey Velotica, and Lee Caldwell, and all the cast and crew from The Sound of Music for another excellent all-school musical. And also, they have congratulations going out to Lee Caldwell and the junior and senior high bands for the 11th annual indoor marching band concert held on Wednesday, December 3rd. I don't know if any of you got to see the musical. My husband went with the kids, and he said it was phenomenal. I mean, like, very impressed. Yes. And they were amazed. They were absolutely amazed, but they did a very good job. Something to be proud of there, for sure. One more acknowledgement tonight. We have, please recognize our kindergarten teachers for extending their duties beyond the doors of their classrooms to participate in and support the Longbourn Light Up Night and the Ellwood City Christmas Parade. Our 6 kindergarten teachers, Tammy Rosansky, Stacy Hamilton, Laura Wilson, Megan Moore, and Jill Felino, Christiana Rumo, plus Minetta Bowman and Jen Byers, special education teachers, have encouraged their 132 students to sing Christmas carols for Wampum Light Up Night. The teachers were also invited to wear the giant Lego costumes and walk in the Wampum Christmas parade. This grade level team of teachers is an excellent example of the teachers going that extra mile to support community initiatives. According to Charlotte Danielson, the framework for teaching evaluation instrument under the 4D participating in the professional community, this teacher activity is a part of the level 4 distinguished category. A big thank you goes out to all of our teachers who volunteer to participate in our community events. Thanks, Chris Gibson.
That's it?
Those are the only two we have.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Valley,
Yes.
add to, last week Pittsburgh Post Gazette had their wrestling preview. Double A, they ranked our wrestling team, I can't remember if it was 8th or 9th. I mean, that's just a huge recognition for the program going around 3 years. It's
That's usually there.
now, in the, what is with you? Oh, yeah, with you.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez. I need a motion to adjourn and sign die. Mr. Newpower, second Mr. Cortez. Meeting adjourned. Now we have to reopen again, reorganization. I need nomination for temporary chairperson. I nominate George Garda to come up here and handle the meeting for election of officers. Everything's written right there, George.
Don't believe that for a minute.
Coming in to take a nomination for election of president and vice president. Just keep going.
Okay, the board will now entertain nominations for the election of the fourth president.
I nominate Michael Newbauer.
Second.
We don't have to vote.
Any other
Any other nominations? Motion to conclude nominations.
So moved.
Okay, entertain a motion for the election of the vice president.
We vote, I'm sorry.
We should vote on,
Yes.
even though.
Oh, you don't have to.
Well, we still vote on Mr. Newpower's nomination.
All in favor?
We do a roll call.
Do a roll call.
Okay, roll call vote, Mr. Rose.
Mr. Bazali,
Yes.
Mr. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Garda,
Yes.
Mr. Newpower,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrelli.
Congratulations, Mr.
Good
Newpower.
luck.
Mr. Garda should turn the meeting over to Mr.
I
Newpower.
open the nominations for vice president.
Meeting is turned over now to Mr. Newpower. He'll handle it from there, George. As he gets president.
It wasn't.
That's not good. I thought you were going for more.
Yeah, I spilled my coffee.
I thought it was all written down.
See what I tell you, Mr. Garvey? There's nothing here. So now I would like to get nominations for vice president of the board.
I nominate Leroy Cortez for vice president.
Okay, do we have a second? Mr. Gardner. Any other nominations? No. Okay, all in favor, close the nominations for vice president of the board. Now, all in favor of Mr. Leroy Cortez as vice president, signify by a roll call vote. Thank you.
Mr. Cortez,
Yes.
Mr. Garda,
Yes.
Mr. Newpower,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrelli,
Yes.
pardon me,
said yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vazali.
Yes.
Okay, congratulations, Mr. Cortez. Okay, then we need, okay. In your packet are the list of meeting dates for the board. We need to have those read and voted on.
Or somebody can read.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have it. Okay, please, Mr. Cortez.
21 board meeting dates. In the folder is a list of 2015 board meeting dates. I move the list be approved as presented.
Second,
Second.
Mr. Vazali. Any objections to the motion? Any questions or discussion? All. Okay, motion's approved. Thank you, Mr. Kara.
I can read 22 also.
Please.
22 for signature. I move that Michael Dupar as board president be authorized as an approved signatory on general payroll, athletic facility, and capital reserve funds.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Carter. Any questions on the motion? Any objections? Motion passes. All right, do we have any new business tonight?
I would like to go back to what I had left off at our last meeting about the school time change. I had emailed you all links. I'm hoping you all had some time to take a look at them. And I wondered if anybody had actually found anything negative, because there isn't anything out there that I've seen. And I think that we really, as a board, need to definitely get the elementary all back on the same time frame. And I would like to seriously have us look at changing the start time of our senior high. I mean, all the data is there. We are looking at a time of a lot of things changing, and this is a proactive move that is going to be very good for the kids, educationally speaking, not only physically, but educationally, and I just don't see how we can turn our backs to this. I think that we really need to pursue this. I'd like to see it put on the agenda for next month.
Any other comments?
See, moving the starting time for Hartman, require an extra bus route.
Could. My advice, maybe to put on the agenda would be to, I know, a short time period here, but maybe expedite, because all of the facets involved in changing a start time, I think we need to get all the groups together. Like, it'd be really say, okay, we're gonna start in Hartman, and I think we need to get elementary teachers together, some parents, the bus company, the administration, board members, if they want to be on a committee, to look at, okay, if we start, here's all the options,
It's fine.
and
What's
come up with the best,
right.
the best option for that.
I
And take into account the tech, their starting time, all of, sports, we gotta look at, the AD should be involved, how that's gonna affect scheduling.
I personally think, as a parent, I would be absolutely against the time change. Now, my kids aren't in elementary anymore, but if we look to push back the start of high school, that would screw up transportation. I pick up every morning, my two and two other kids because their parents are already at work. And, by pushing that start time, it would screw up my work day. I could probably get away with it, but I imagine that there are a number of other people that would really be impacted. So I think without getting some feedback from parents, we'd be not looking at all the avenues, because I think it would really cause some hardships for folks that would have no way of getting people to school, and that whole morning routine, which is a nightmare at my house. And I can only imagine if now you had to worry about, both parents have to start and can't get there
could cause a lot of problems.
Mr. Mancini, you know, in light of all the positive research that's been done on the later starting time, you know, maybe it's time for us to survey parents, like Mr. McMyer said. If we could, you know, at least get that started to see.
Well, I'm not opposed to anything. I would just like to say that I understand, well, when we, first of all, when we changed the elementary, the 5th and 6th grade, there weren't very many happy parents with that, okay? And I want to say this, and I want to say this in the right way. Not that I'm not concerned with what parents think, but our job is to do what's best for the kids. And what's best for the kids is clearly stated in these articles and these studies, as a later start time is better for them. It's better for them. So I would think that any parent out there who wants what's best for their kids is going to want them to start later, because they're going to have more sleep, they're going to do better in school, they're not going to be as tired, and it's going to be an all-around better situation. These parents who leave early, that means they come home early. I mean, whether there's a half an hour gap in the morning and there's a half an hour gap in the afternoon when they come home, there are always going to be kids that are going to be, what do they call them, latchkey, or I don't even know what the term is. But things, most parents are going to find a way to do it like the way they have in the past. I'm not against by any means pulling the parents. I'm just saying our job is to do what's best for the kids. That's what our job is. And with the studies and our test scores and everything leaning that way, and especially when we're talking about the elementary, I think they need to go back on elementary schedule, our 5th and 6th grade, and high school. I mean, we're not talking like a 2-hour time frame. I'm not saying, you know, let's start them at 10 o'clock in the afternoon and let them go before. But, you know, I'd like to see daylight for them. I'd like to see them walking to school in the daylight, not in the dark. But I would just like to see it put on, that we're all looking and talking about it proactively instead of it just being passed. I think this is something that we really need to address in whichever way and in all avenues I'm open for. Polling parents, whatever, however, how many people we need to get involved, but again, I think our bottom line is we're here to do what's best for the kids, and the parents will follow suit, I think, because it's what's best for their kids. I would like to think they're gonna think that way.
Oh, I think Mr. Garda has a good point there. We need to start with the parents.
Well,
We need input from them. You know, if we have to get a group together and survey, you know, the situation, I think that needs to be done first of all, because I think it's going to impact a lot of people.
I think before you, just to know how things work, before you can survey the parents, if you just say, we're gonna start later, they really don't understand what that means,
Exactly.
impact-wise, if their kid plays baseball. And if their kid plays basketball, so, or, you know,
We have to have a game plan before we present.
yeah, it's not
Agreed.
as simple as sending a survey out to the community saying, well, you know, there's like huge impact, you know, just pickups and drop-offs, you know, parents at work and they can't, you know, not gonna be home when their kid gets home with their kid, so, that's why I always say, I could think right now off the top of my head how it's gonna affect me, you know, in the school, but to get everybody's perspective, especially, you know, the principals and parents and teachers and, athletics and talking, you know, we have a superintendent's meeting next Wednesday, you know, I could, if there's any schools considering it in the area,
Question
so,
I have,
both
do you
tech
know of any
and-
schools that have a later starting
Here, in this area, no, but except the ones that are in those, you know, articles.
Yeah, that's
Around
what I'm
here,
saying.
I don't know, I haven't had anybody ask, like at the SAC meetings, they usually pass something around and say, is anybody thinking about, say, you know, how do you guys handle photography? You know, they pass these things around, so I could pass something around saying, Ellwood City's, is, you know, looking at later start times for high school, has anybody considered that? And get some in, you know, then you contact, what they do is they try to get you to contact South Butler, you know, and you get, talk to them if they're doing it. But I don't know of anybody who's asked that question or done that, or
What I
looked
would
into
like
it,
to
or.
know is What schools have changed their starting times? What schools have done that? How long have they done it? And what's the long-term effects?
Well, that's what the studies were showing you, that the later the school time starts, the better the results are.
Not long-term. I'm not talking about one, because in reality, there's schools that have done one thing, and immediately the test scores go up for the first year. I mean, I can tell you, the school in Wisconsin, the only thing they did was stop serving processed food in their cafeteria. Discipline went down, test scores went up. So I guess we should do that too. There's a lot of things. I'm very hesitant on changing such a drastic policy on studies as opposed to hardcore evidence. What time do they start classes in the Far East?
That's Mr. Keeley, but next
He was
month.
there, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it's at the top of the morning. That's what we always hear about, who we're competing against and how good they did. Look, I understand it's a different culture, but I'm also not so much that the later starting date, if a child needs to be up right now at 7 a.m., 6 a.m. to start school, starting it an hour later, whatever, there's no guarantee he's gonna get any more sleep. We can't control what happens in the night. We just may go to bed an hour later.
My fear is that a lot of folks that are, a lot of kids, especially at the high school level, that are active in a lot of things, the later school ends, the later those activities start, and the later they go, and are you really getting a net gain of downtime or rest time? Because if you're pushing all those events back, I mean, right now, you know, my kids have some, you know, whether practices and things, and even like elementary basketball last year where you're traveling, and sometimes those things are going late into the evening, and now if they're delayed by another hour because of school times, it's just gonna push them back later in the evening to where they're really not getting any more rest. So,
I don't see how that's happening, because those scheduled events in the evening are gonna be the same times, and you're gonna have an extra hour to sleep in the morning. But I'm not even talking about an hour difference in start time. I mean, that's something that would need to be decided, and we'd all have to look at. And again, you know, I don't see how anybody can say that it's going to be a bad thing for any of us.
Well, I'm not convinced that it's the right thing to do. Whether you like to hear that. I'm not opposed, what I'm opposed to doing is sitting down and voting and saying, this is what we're gonna do, before we even look at the long-term implications.
Well, that's what I'm asking for, is to get.
I'm not looking
get
into
us
all this. The other
looking
thing
into
is,
it.
when it comes to athletic events, we're members of the WPIL and PIAA. All these other schools have to cooperate.
What does that have to do with what we're talking about, the WPI now?
Because sporting events, especially in the spring, start at 3 o'clock, 3:30. We start school, we're taking away, sometimes kids, because of travel, get out earlier, you're taking another, whatever that time is, you move it back, that's more instruction time you're losing. If other schools don't change their times.
Right, but they also, John, Mr. Lake had given us information on that, and it doesn't affect very many kids for very long. Those seasons, they are once or twice a week for, you're talking about, what, an extra half an hour? And the kids that are out, that's part of their responsibility. If you're participating in a sport, then you're responsible to make up your work. That's with anything that you do. That's not just sports, that's with academics. Anything that you take out of there, that's your responsibility to do. And I'm not talking about an hour or two. I'm talking about doing what's best for these children.
How much
in our
time are you
district.
talking about?
I don't know. That's something that's not my decision to make.
So it doesn't matter.
I'm
as long
talking
as it's
daylight
later.
hours.
So as long as it's a later starting time.
That's what all the studies say. The later the starting time is, the better effects that it has on education. Did you read the articles? And you know what you know exactly what I'm referring to. So you don't believe them?
No, it's just psychologists don't all have a really good track record of changing things, all right? A group of psychologists back in 1981 said Jack Abbott was reformed. Nothing wrong with him. Put him back out on the streets 24 hours later, somebody else lost their life.
Okay, I don't-
So,
this was-
I'm just not convinced that that's what we should do, because that's what they said, as simple as that. I wanna see a proven track record, I wanna see somebody else do it, and other people cooperate with it. I'm not opposed to looking at it, but there's a lot of things that's gonna affect.
All right, so, what do we go from here? Do we
I would
want
say-
to put some,
I would say put a group of people together, elementary teachers, high school teachers, parents, administrators, AD, get all the input, bus company, got somebody that's talking about tech. We gotta get, I mean, because they have certain start times,
Yeah.
those kids' start times are gonna be different.
Isn't that a separate bus that goes to go to?
It goes the same time, it picks the kids up pretty much the same time, right now. I mean, so,
But I mean, are the kids on the the kids that are on the VoTech bus, is that just a VoTech bus?
yes.
So if they're
Yeah.
going to VoTech, that bus doesn't have Lincoln students on
If
it,
they
or they
play-
don't? I
They
don't
could
know.
play a sport. We've had kids at VoTech play a sport.
Okay.
Well, they would be, we gotta talk to everybody, that's all I'm
Okay.
saying. I mean, I don't know
just
all the
didn't know how
answers.
VoTech buses work.
It goes, picks them up at home, takes them, brings them back home.
Okay, but it doesn't stop
Alternative
here or anything
schools.
like that.
We gotta look at special ed, we gotta look at everything. I mean, I can't answer all the questions for all the stakeholders and who this is gonna affect.
Of course.
I mean, the studies show that, we would be the only school in the area doing it, and how does that affect
Maybe
everything
we'll
else?
start something good.
Could be.
Could be.
That's my thought, I mean, just like we're doing these other studies, we'll just add one.
Yeah.
Well, especially with the elementary, I mean, we know we're dealing with a social, what's the term, I'm sorry, there's so many terms out there, I don't wanna screw anybody up, or, economically disadvantaged, and, you know, the studies really point towards that. I mean, you know, needing the sleep and so on, and to get, I really believe that they all need to be back on the same schedule. You talk about parents, that's hard to get your kid to Hartman and then go back over and get to Perry, and you're running twice during the day because your kids aren't on the same schedules.
And my concern, you know, at this point is, there's very few people sitting around this table who know what Meg's talking about. And, you know, we start bombarding them right off the bat without them having research, readings available to them. That's gonna screw everything up, you know, the stakeholders that you mentioned, Joe, they all have to have the same background knowledge.
Well, that's, you gotta educate. That's
Exactly.
what a committee does, that's what you do with a committee. Let's start at the bottom, here's the research, here's what we do now, here's what we've done in the past, here are some proposals, what happens? Tell me what happens if we start at 8:15 at the high school. What's in, we end at 3:15, what happens? Everybody tell me what happens. Special ed, what happens to you? Athletics, what happens to you? Band, what happens to you? You know, work release, for kids that are on work release, what happens with those kids? So you've gotta look at all the ramifications. Not everybody's gonna be happy. People are gonna be upset, just like when we switched to grade level buildings. I think they finally, when we did it, they were mad, but when we did it, it made sense. So it would have to come from, you know, a committee that would sit down and say, here's the pros, here's the cons, here's what it affects, here's the positives, here's the negatives. Board, make a decision.
Same thing we did with the,
Yes, everything.
possibility of closing the park.
Same
Now, when
thing
that's
with
all
half-day
done, it all
kindergarten.
comes in and it works out, I have no problem supporting it.
What?
Yeah, I have no problem supporting that.
Custodial, you'd have to be, how that's gonna affect
before we,
lunches.
I mean, should we have a consensus before we even
I
move
don't-
forward to this? We don't have enough people to really have a meeting to vote tonight.
Well, it's not something that's to start today,
Right.
because it's gonna be a rather long process.
Especially if you want to survey parents,
Right, that's what I'm
survey.
saying, we're not gonna find out next, within a month, just before we do this.
What's that you're saying before you do this?
But I hate to see work started and there not be enough support for it to go forward. And, you know, we're short on members. I mean, even if we had a vote tonight and one person said no, then it would pass. I don't think that's fair. So, I mean, I
Wait
don't
till
wanna put the-
January
I
to
don't
bring
wanna
us,
put the
yeah,
cart-
Postpone it.
I don't wanna put the cart in front of the horse.
Okay, I just have to ask because I can't even imagine that you guys don't even wanna look into this. I mean, this is something that is important to all the kids in our district, not to one separate group. This is something that's going to benefit all the kids. And you guys are saying you wanna wait to just vote on it to even get it started? Seriously? I'm sorry, I'm just a little taken back because this isn't going to hurt a single child. It is not going to harm a single
That's your
child.
opinion, Renee, this is your opinion.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And if one person tonight says no, Renee says it's shut down anyway, so have the whole board here.
Okay, and I simply ask.
If
that
you wanna
guys
take
fill
a
that-
roll call vote tonight, we'll take it, and I'm sure that it'll end up dead.
So then
Wait
you're,
until the full board comes.
that's fine, but I'm just amazed that you guys feel that way. That's my comment, as I'm amazed.
I am just amazed, every time someone doesn't agree with you, you sit there and say you don't care about the kids. I've been on the school board for 10 years. Every 3 years, I put in about 300 donated hours. And sit there, it's because I don't agree with you, that I don't care about them, I take that, I take exception to that. This board functioned and moved before you even got here. Now you're on here, and someone disagrees with you, oh, you don't care about the kids. It's not that anyone doesn't, they disagree with you. No one said we're not going to do it. You come in with an idea, everybody has to agree with you and do it right now, today, or you don't care about all the kids.
First of all, it wasn't my idea at first. It was Mr. Garda's. Thank you.
Yeah, I want it done right.
I
You know,
agree.
and I want it done right, let's say, to the kids. You know, I've read the research says it's good. This is Ellwood City, okay? We have to look at all the possibilities, you know, that could happen. Let's take the time, let's look at the possibilities, let's start a group, and go from there.
Thank you.
You know, and Buzz, I agree with you, it should be the full board. The
Exactly.
full board should vote
I have no problem with that.
on that. And I don't think anybody is objecting to what you're saying, it's just saying that it's gonna take some time
I
to
agree.
do it.
That's why I just wanted to see Mr. Mancini get started, because I know there's a lot of time and I know how busy he is, and this is something that is going to take time.
But they've already started, you know, I've asked Mr. Lane to check with WPIL, you know, PIAA, see what's going on. We have to start slow. It's a big, big change. Start slow. Hopefully, we'll get to the point where we can say, yeah, we can change the starting time in the elementary. We can't do it at the high school yet, but we can do it in the elementary. That's a start. But I want to go cautiously, I really do.
Agreed.
You know, and I feel for the parents. Because, you know, I see these elementary kids walking past my house at 7:30 in the morning. We were going to the parking lot. I see it. And they should go later. You know, if this was ideal, we'd have school 12 p.m. to 7 a.m. like they do in Las Vegas. They have night school. You know, and give the kids an option.
Teachers, not that.
But they do in most Vegas, like, you know, the
In
school.
Vegas, they do
Kids
that.
that work during the day.
That's in Vegas?
Interesting. All right. Anything else under new business? All right, motion to adjourn. To go into executive session for personnel. Motion to adjourn.
Oh,
Mr. Carter, seconded, Mr.
Sorry.
Gisali.
You're quiet as a mouse over there, I didn't even know you were over
Mr.
there.
Harrister.
Thank you, Mr. Houston.
You're welcome, guys.
Leaves out front. Okay, I got a call, that little old lady died.
Well, I'll tell you, Mr. Gar, we would be on it right now, but we're really short handed. I got a guy out of maintenance, I got a guy out of custodial staff, I got one girl that's, sub that's working. How long have you been on this? I'm really short handed right now, so as soon as we get caught up on.
No, that, I mean, that's from,
Yeah.
and I'm only down 1 or 2 days a week.
Right, now usually we're all over that, but it's just, we're sick.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
I think we've done a great job in the last 4 years, and I think we'll continue to do it.
Bless you.
Oh, don't like chocolate. Never did, never will.
Congratulations.